Hi folks, Doc here. Today I'm going to talk to you about a project that kind of fell by the wayside and it's been sitting around stagnating, not doing anything due to a lack of funds, a lack of parts, a lack of inspiration. Who knows? It's a big complex project and I put it aside waiting for the right time to get back into it, and I'm getting much closer to that time. I've got a new engine plan for it, so let's go over Project Kaiser. It looks rather hopeless in this pile of snow and debris and frankly some garbage that I got to get rid of. But that is the Bannerman chassis. Doesn't look like much right now and the tarp kind of makes it hard to see what's going on there. But if you refer to some of my older videos, that's quite the chassis. It's got a great big differential rear end on it like a car or a truck. And it's got leaf springs, which I did. And it's got that neat Doug Nash 3-speed. In previous videos I've referred to this as either the Bannerman project or Mule 3, and that was kind of just calling it what I could call it for the sake of calling it something. Given that I built Mule and, you know, gained a little bit of notoriety for it, and then I had Mule 2 there, and well, frankly, you know, the original Mule ultimately got taken down for parts and I changed plans on it, and doesn't really look like it's going anywhere. Mule 2, of course, got stripped out for parts, and a lot of it ended up in Suburban Commando. So anyways, the Mule 3 thing, there's no sense carrying on the Mule name. That stood for Mobile Utility and Light Extrication, by the way. There's no sense carrying on the Mule scheme, and I had to come up with a fitting title for the project. And the project title, as of this point moving forward, is Kaiser. And that's kind of a tip of the hat to old military vehicles. Ultimately, this thing should be quite the beast. It is a daunting project, and as I said, I've changed engine plans. Originally it was going to get the Kubota Z400 diesel, which was going to be turbocharged, and I changed plans, and as you are probably aware, the Kubota Z400 is going into Suburban Gorilla. So what am I doing for Kaiser? I'll show you. This lump of steel sitting on a dolly in the shop is the remains of a Yanmar 135D compact tractor. I picked up the tractor a few years ago. The transmission was shredded, and I looked long and I looked hard trying to come up with replacement transmission gears, and ultimately didn't get anywhere. So I decided to hell with it. I'm not going to restore it. I'm going to use it for parts and pieces and whatever I can. I guess the first parts to get reassigned were the front wheels that ended up on Suburban Commando. They look great on there and they work very, very well. The rear wheels got traded off and some other parts and pieces ended up here and there. And look, the neighbor's dog is being an airhead again. Alright, so back to the juicy crap. What you're looking at here is a Yanmar 2T73 inline 2-cylinder diesel engine, liquid cooled, rated at 13 horsepower. This engine here has a really, really unique manifold preheater system, and I'm going to tell you about that in a couple of minutes here. And the basic plan is to use this to power the Kaiser project. Now, the bell housing and tranny tunnel are one big piece here. And obviously that does me no good. I don't want this big long tunnel here. But what I am going to do is I'm going to make use of the factory clutch and the factory bell housing, and I'm going to cut the tunnel off right about here somewhere. And I'm going to weld in a plate and I'm going to hang a bearing, and that's going to give me use of the factory Yanmar clutch and then give me a shaft to work with, and I'm going to shorten down the original shaft that came out of there and use that to shaft drive the project. So part of what's changed for the project, other than the engine itself, is the drive system. Instead of having, you know, a transversely mounted engine and pulleys and belts and a clutch pedal that just tensions the pulleys, like I was going to have with the Kubota, I'm going all shaft on this project. Well, almost all shaft, and I'll tell you how and why. Coming out of this engine will be the clutch. Coming out of that, of course, is the shaft. The shaft is going to go into that Doug Nash Enterprises T92 3-speed that's sitting on the Bannerman chassis right now, and that of course is a linear transmission. and there's going to be a shaft coming out of that. Now, to keep things kind of interesting, I have decided that I'm going to use a range box off a Polaris 250, was it a Sportsman? Oh, hell, something like that. Anyways, it was an ATV that had a CVT and a range box, so it was an automatic. It didn't have a separate, multi-speed transmission. It had a range box, high, low, and reverse, and a CVT. Well, I've saved that box, and I'm going to use that, so the shaft is going to come out of the Doug Nash unit and into that range box, and out of that range box again. What that's going to allow me to have is a high and low range for that Doug Nash 3-speed. So I'm going to have 3 high and 3 low, kind of like the Sears is. As an interesting side benefit, I'm also going to have a low range reverse. So it's going to come out of that range box, and I'm just pointing out here that it is going to be 4-wheel drive because I'm using front end components from a Wolverine ATV, and if you saw my video stripping in the shop, you saw me taking that apart. That's going to be kind of interesting insofar as the ratio does not match the Bannerman rear end. I forget what the numbers are exactly. I've got like 3-to-1 on one and 6-to-1 on the other, or something like that. Now, it is a shaft drive front end, but in order to get the ratios to match, I'm going to have to pull a little bit of trickery, and I think what that's going to amount to is hanging a sprocket off the drive shaft coming out of the range box and having a sprocket going to another shaft to the front end, and using different size sprockets in that arrangement to equalize the front and rear ratio so I can have 4-wheel drive. So ultimately the project is going to be a 2-seat side-by-side, and I'm probably going to have a utility box. It might even dump. This engine does have its own hydraulic pump. I can run hydraulic accessories directly off it. I'd love to have a hydraulic dump box on it. I'm not sure if that's going to happen yet. Ultimately, if I can pull it off sooner or later, I'd like to actually have body work on this thing that would resemble like a flat fender military Jeep or something along those lines. I have no sheet metal skills when it comes to custom making bodywork, so I have no idea how that's going to go. But there it is. This is Project Kaiser. This is my side-by-side utility FU tractor thing. Let's have a better look at the engine, shall we? One of the super trippy little things about this thing is the manifold preheater. Yanmar called it the Thermo Start. And in the original dashboard there was a little push button for it, and it's really, really neat. So what you have here is a little reservoir that you put diesel fuel into, and it's got a heating element in the manifold. And basically the way it works is when you apply current to the coil that's in there, it heats up and allows diesel to drip into the manifold. And ultimately that diesel actually catches fire. It starts a fire inside the intake manifold and makes cold starts easier. I'm going to demonstrate that for you because I think it's really cool. So I'm going to open up the airbox here. Just give you a look in there. It's not much to see at the moment, but in a second I'm going to hook up some power and show you how that works. Just going to use my little battery boost box here to apply power. It's not turned on yet, don't panic. To apply power to the manifold preheater, and I'm just going to point the camera inside, and I'm going to hit the switch on the box here. As you can see, smoke is already developing. That didn't take long at all. And the coil is glowing. And poof. Fire in the hole. Just going to shut that off now. So it's kind of funny when you think about, the Thermo Start system actually starts a fire inside the intake manifold, and that facilitates cold starts. Neat, huh? go. That didn't go too badly. I haven't run this thing in quite some time, and that wasn't too bad considering the crappy battery. So, taking a quick look overhead at this thing. Again, that's the Yanmar Thermo Start reservoir that holds the diesel for the Thermostart manifold preheater. And over here we have the two fuel injectors. Over here is actually the alternator. Believe it or not, I know that's where a water pump would belong. Strangely enough, these engines don't have a water pump per se. They just rely on the heating and cooling action for the water to flow. Apparently it works. It seems a little foreign to me, but apparently it works. If I ever find myself getting into a little bit of trouble, I could probably add on a water pump. But yeah, strange but true. Over here is the compression relief mechanism, so that, you know, when you're doing a cold start you can let off a little pressure. And apparently when you haven't started them in a while, you're supposed to completely relieve the pressure and crank it over a few times to build oil pressure and get the oil going before you let her rip. That went to a rod in the dashboard. Moving over to this side, there's the injection pump in there. And if I can just sneak down here, I know the lighting's a little bit questionable, but right coming off the injection pump and all that stuff, this is a hydraulic pump right here. And given that it's integral to the engine, that'll be really handy for me to run some sort of hydraulic implement or dump box or God only knows what. Hell, I could run power steering off it if I wanted to. Okay folks, so there's the overview for Kaiser. As you can see, I've definitely got my hands full with this one, and this is, you know, why it's been so long in the making and will continue to be long in the making. This is kind of the pinnacle. I really don't know how I can go above and beyond this, really. So this is what I'm looking at, and this is what you can expect to see. So in the meantime, thanks for tuning in to Sprocket's Garage on YouTube, and until next time, take care of yourself.